So I'm Daniel Slotwiner, Director of Advertising Research at Facebook. I spend a lot of time, and my team does, thinking about video at the moment. It's something that we're obviously in the midst of. We're thinking a lot about some of the questions that I think we're going to get into today. How do you measure the value of video? And we're thinking a lot about what's different about the video that we provide versus other formats of video. So we're spending a lot of time trying to understand the relationship between outcomes and duration, how to evaluate creative, what's the relationship between certain types of objectives and other types of creative, and what's the relationship between kind of the video format and other formats that we and others offer, right? How do these things work together? I think is a really important question for us, because it goes back to what Andrew was saying, which is we find that the biggest levers for value and ROI are reach and creative. And so when you make a decision about a format, you're implicitly making a decision about reach. And when you make a decision about creative, you're also making a decision about the objective that you're prioritizing. And so those are really important things that we're trying to highlight and understand better and measure better.
Well, it's interesting because, never was there a more particular example of context than Facebook, perhaps. When Andrew's talking about context and that being a critical piece, you have a very specific kind of environment, so.
Yeah, and context has a lot of elements to it. It's the environment that you're in when you're consuming the content. It's the content itself. It's the adjacency of different types of stories, which in our case is extremely individualized. So these are really complicated things to understand. The good news is I think there's some big broad strokes that matter a lot. Creative, reach, like get those right, and then these other things are second, third, fourth, 100th order, but super important.
So I'm supposed to ask Brad about himself and what he does, but I can't help it. What reach? Can we talk more about that? Like, what do you mean? Just getting it in front of 1 million people, or target it in front of the right people, or frequency plus reach?
Yes.
Great. So let's talk more about it. I mean,
cost per reach.
Classic TV stuff?
Well, absolutely. I mean, I think so one way to view the world is sort of that things are changing rapidly, right? We're going overly simplistic, going from a world where reach was easy to achieve on TV 30 years ago, and the top-rated shows got you 70% of the audience, and you could do one buy and get a lot of reach, and now that's changing, and I think it's still possible to reach as many people for sure, but you have to do it in a lot of different places. And that has a lot of crazy implications for how you kind of plan and buy media, right? And I think one of the things that we're thinking about a lot is sort of consciously, like how, as the video world evolves, we don't create yet another silo that makes it harder to plan efficiently across channels. So we're thinking of kind of an audience-centric view of the world, where you start with the audience, you start with a segmentation, a reasonable one, what you would say to a certain type of person if you could find them. You develop the communication strategy, then that probably has some different assets, and it definitely has different channels, and you try to do that, as best you can. And I think it's been alluded to a couple of times, but the industry is just not set up to do that. People are not paid to do that. The people that need to communicate are not communicating with each other about these things, and so it's an enormously complex thing that we as an industry need to kind of acknowledge and start to figure out ways to improve.